There are seasons in life when it feels like everything is falling apart. When the weight of failure, betrayal, or loss is too heavy to carry, people count you out. They walk away. They whisper that it's over for you. But what they don't see is what God is doing behind the scenes. What they don't know is that every setback is setting you up for something greater. The pain, the struggle, the silence. It's all part of the preparation. God doesn't waste anything, not the tears, not the late nights, not the heartbreak. He uses it all. And when God gets ready to bring you back, it won't be quiet. It won't be small. It's going to be loud. It's going to be public. It's going to be undeniable. Because this comeback isn't about proving your worth to people. It's about showing the power of God working through someone who refused to give up. You may have been overlooked, underestimated, even forgotten, but you were never forsaken. Heaven has been watching. Your prayers were heard. Your faith wasn't in vain. The time is coming when what once held you back will no longer have power over you. The doors that closed will open wider than you imagined. The places where you were rejected will be the same places you return to with honor. What looked like the end was actually the beginning of a new, better story. So don't be discouraged. Don't shrink back. God is not finished with you. In fact, He's just getting started. Your story is going to inspire. Your strength will be a testimony. And when people ask how you did it, all you'll be able to say is, God moved. Get ready. Your comeback is going to be epic. Watch God move. What looks like a setback is often a setup in disguise. It's easy to look at moments of failure, disappointment, or unexpected detours and feel like everything is falling apart. When plans collapse, doors close, or dreams seem to fade, the natural response is frustration, fear, or even hopelessness. But those moments are rarely what they appear to be on the surface. What seems like a breakdown is often the beginning of a breakthrough that you can't yet see. God has a way of taking the very things that hurt us, the very situations that seem like dead ends, and turning them into the foundation for something greater. In His plan, nothing is wasted. Every delay, every disappointment, every detour has a purpose. These experiences are not punishments or mistakes. They are divine preparation. When life doesn't go as you expected, it's tempting to ask, why me? Why now? But if you shift your perspective, you begin to realize that these interruptions are actually God's way of protecting you, guiding you, and preparing you for what lies ahead. The closed doors are not rejections. They are redirecting you to the right path. The lost opportunities are not failures. They are lessons that build your strength, character, and resilience. Each setback is a vital part of your journey, designed to equip you with wisdom and endurance for the next phase of your life. Consider how many great stories of success and transformation begin with hardship. The greatest leaders, the most inspiring people, didn't achieve their victories without experiencing setbacks. What made their comebacks epic was their willingness to trust the process and believe that God was working behind the scenes, even when it didn't feel like it. Sometimes the very thing that seems like the worst thing to happen is exactly what's needed to bring about growth and a new beginning. The pain and frustration you feel now are not the end of your story. They are the opening chapters of a comeback so powerful that it will exceed your wildest dreams. It is important to remember that God's timing is perfect even when ours isn't. When you experience delays, it doesn't mean God has forgotten you or abandoned you. Often, He is simply orchestrating the circumstances to position you for a greater blessing. Sometimes the delay is necessary because you're not ready yet for what's coming. You may need to grow in faith, develop new skills, or build relationships that will be crucial in the future. The waiting season is a preparation period, and God is actively working to shape you into the person you need to become to handle your next level of success and responsibility. There is a beautiful truth in the idea that every experience, especially the hard ones, has a purpose. Nothing is wasted. The struggles you face refine you. They teach you perseverance, patience, and trust. They deepen your understanding of God's grace and faithfulness. These lessons cannot be learned through comfort and ease. They come from walking through trials and holding on to faith when everything around you seems uncertain. In your setback, God is setting you up for a remarkable comeback. This is not just a cliche. It is a reality rooted in God's nature as a redeemer and restorer. He specializes in making something beautiful out of brokenness. Just as a master artist uses the roughest materials to create a masterpiece, God takes your broken pieces and shapes them into something magnificent. The disappointment you feel today will become the fuel for your triumph tomorrow. When you begin to see your setbacks as setups, your entire mindset changes. Instead of being discouraged or defeated, you become hopeful and expectant. You start to recognize that every closed door, every challenge, and every moment of waiting is part of a bigger plan that you can't yet fully understand. This perspective gives you strength to keep going, to keep believing, and to keep trusting God's timing and His process. Remember that your comeback will not only be a personal victory, but also an inspiration to others. People who have faced setbacks and come back stronger become beacons of hope for those still struggling. Your story of redemption and resilience will encourage others to hold on to faith and trust that God is at work, even in their darkest moments. So as you navigate through your setbacks, keep this truth close to your heart. Nothing is wasted in God's plan. The very things that seem like obstacles are the very things that will prepare you for the greatest comeback of your life. Trust in God's perfect timing, lean into His strength, and watch as He moves in ways you never imagined. Your setback is not your end. It is the beginning of an epic comeback that will testify to His power and grace. Keep your eyes on Him, because your breakthrough is on the way. The process is part of the promise. It's something many of us find difficult to accept because when we are in the middle of waiting, silence, and struggle, it often feels like nothing is happening at all. We want immediate results, quick fixes, and clear signs that our efforts and prayers are paying off. But life, and more importantly, God's work in us, doesn't operate on our timetable. The waiting season, the quiet moments when it seems like God is silent, the struggles that test our patience and faith, these are not meaningless gaps in our journey. They are essential parts of the promise coming to life. When God makes a promise, He also provides the process. The promise is the future reality of what will be, but the process is how you get there. It is the training ground, the workshop, and the preparation period. Just as gold must go through fire to be purified, so too must we pass through seasons of refinement. This refining process shapes our character, strengthens our faith, and deepens our reliance on God. It is often uncomfortable, sometimes painful, but always purposeful. The process ensures that when the promise arrives, we are ready to receive it and manage it well. One of the hardest parts about trusting the process is that it often doesn't make sense. When you're in the middle of the waiting, you may wonder why God hasn't moved yet. You might ask why your prayers seem unanswered or why doors remain closed. The silence can feel deafening, but this silence is not God's absence. It's His presence, working quietly behind the scenes. God is not in a hurry because He knows the timing has to be perfect. He is not rushed because His plans are far greater than ours and require us to be fully prepared. In these moments of waiting and struggle, God is teaching you patience, faith, and endurance. These qualities cannot be rushed or bypassed. They must be cultivated over time. The promise of a bright future will mean little if you have not learned to walk steadily through the challenges of the present. The struggles refine your character and build resilience that will serve you well in the seasons to come. Trusting the process means believing that God's delay is not denial, and His silence is not abandonment. It means holding on to faith even when the road ahead is unclear. The process is also about growth. Sometimes we want the promise without the growth that must come with it. We want blessings without the learning and transformation that prepares us to steward those blessings wisely. But God's promises always come with a call to grow, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. The waiting season is when your faith is tested and your roots grow deep. It is when your identity in God is strengthened and your purpose becomes clearer. You're being shaped into the person you need to be to handle the promise that awaits. It's important to remember that God's process is full of purpose and intention. Nothing is wasted or accidental. Every moment of struggle, every tear shed, every night spent wrestling with doubt is a thread in the tapestry God is weaving for your life. Even the things that seem like setbacks or detours are part of His plan to bring you to the right place at the right time with the right heart and mind. Trusting the process means surrendering control and believing that God's plan is better than ours, even when it feels slow or confusing. This perspective transforms how we see waiting and struggle. Instead of being seasons of frustration or fear, they become opportunities for deep spiritual growth and preparation. Instead of asking, "Why is this taking so long?" we begin to ask, "What is God teaching me in this season?" Instead of feeling abandoned, we learn to feel secure in God's faithfulness, knowing that He is always working, even when we can't see it. When you embrace the process as part of the promise, you develop a deeper trust in God's timing and methods. You begin to rest in the assurance that He is with you, refining you and preparing you for something greater. You become patient, knowing that rushing ahead or trying to force things can lead to mistakes or missed blessings. You become more peaceful because you understand that God's timing is perfect and that what is meant for you will come at exactly the right moment. The promise will come, but it will come fully and abundantly when the process is complete. Your comeback will be powerful not only because of what God does, but because of who you have become through the journey. The process molds you into a stronger, wiser, and more faithful person, ready to walk boldly into the fulfillment of God's promises. So when you feel like the waiting is too long, the silence is too loud, or the struggle is too hard, remember that this is all part of the process, the essential preparation for the promise that is on its way. Trust God's timing, lean into His strength, and keep your eyes fixed on the future He has promised you. Your breakthrough will not only be a moment of victory, but a testimony of faith, endurance, and divine purpose. The process is part of the promise, and that makes every moment worth it. Your worth isn't defined by others. This is a truth that is often hard to grasp because so much of our identity can feel tied to what people think about us. From a young age, many of us learn to measure our value by external standards, how we look, what we achieve, who approves of us, or how many people acknowledge our efforts. When others count us out, dismiss us, or fail to see our potential, it's easy to internalize those judgments and start believing that we aren't worthy. But the reality is that the opinions of others do not determine your true value. God sees you differently. He sees your worth when others don't, and His perspective is what truly matters. When people count you out, it might feel like you've been left behind or forgotten. You might wonder if you'll ever be able to prove them wrong or regain their respect. But here's the truth. Being counted out by people is not the final word on your life. Just because others do not recognize your potential or worth does not mean God has given up on you. In fact, often it is in those very moments of rejection, neglect, or doubt from others that God is working most powerfully in your life. He is preparing you, equipping you, and positioning you for a comeback that will exceed all expectation. Your comeback is not about earning the approval of others. When you make a return after being overlooked or underestimated, it is not to prove them wrong or to satisfy their doubts. Your comeback is for God's glory. It is a testimony of His power, His faithfulness, and His ability to redeem situations that seem hopeless. When you rise again, it should be because you recognize your value in God's eyes and because you want to honor Him with your life. This mindset shifts your motivation from seeking human validation to seeking divine purpose. People's opinions can be fleeting and inconsistent. One day they may praise you and the next day they may criticize or ignore you. Relying on others for your sense of worth is like building a house on sand. It won't stand firm. But when your worth is grounded in God's love and acceptance, you have a solid foundation that no one can shake. God's view of you is unchanging and perfect. He created you with purpose, equipped you with gifts, and loves you unconditionally. Knowing this frees you from the need to constantly seek validation from others and allows you to walk confidently in your God-given identity. It is also important to recognize that God often uses the times when others count you out to reveal your true strength and character. When you face rejection, it can feel like a personal attack, but it's also an opportunity to develop perseverance, humility, and faith. Instead of shrinking back or giving up, these moments invite you to lean more deeply into God's promises and trust that His plan for your life is far greater than what people can see. Your comeback is a chance to show that your identity and worth come from God alone, not from human approval. Many biblical examples illustrate this truth. People like David, Joseph, and Esther were counted out by others at some point in their lives. David was overlooked as a young shepherd boy. Joseph was rejected and sold into slavery. Esther was a young woman in a foreign land with no apparent influence. Yet God saw their value and used them mightily for His purposes. Their comebacks were not about proving others wrong, but about fulfilling God's plan and bringing glory to Him. Their stories remind us that God's perspective is the one that ultimately defines our worth. When you begin to see yourself through God's eyes, you start to understand that rejection or dismissal by others does not diminish your value. Instead, it highlights the importance of focusing on what God says about you. He sees your potential, your heart, and your destiny. He is invested in your success and is actively working on your behalf, even when others have counted you out. Your worth is not based on what people say or do. It is based on who God says you are, a beloved child, created for a purpose and destined for greatness. Your comeback is not about meeting the expectations of others, but about stepping into the identity God has given you. It's about embracing the truth that you are valuable, capable, and loved beyond measure. When you understand this, you become unstoppable. You no longer need to prove yourself to anyone because your confidence is rooted in God's unchanging love and acceptance. You can move forward with boldness, knowing that your comeback is part of a bigger story that God is writing, a story of redemption, restoration, and glory. So when people count you out, remember that God has not counted you out. He sees your worth when others don't. Your comeback isn't for their approval, it's for His glory. Let this truth empower you to rise above the doubts, criticisms, and rejections. Trust that God is working on your behalf and that your greatest days are still ahead. Your value is secure in Him, and your comeback will be a powerful testament to the fact that God's view of you is what truly matters. Faith activates movement even when you cannot see it. This is a truth that can be difficult to hold on to, especially when you feel stuck in a season of waiting, silence, or struggle. When the circumstances around you seem unchanged, it's easy to question whether God is really at work. The visible evidence may be lacking, but that does not mean the work isn't happening behind the scenes. Your faith, the deep trust and belief in God's promises and His power, is what sets spiritual forces in motion. It is the invisible catalyst that activates movement in your life, even when the physical evidence is slow to appear. Many times we think that progress has to be seen to be real. We want clear signs, instant results, and quick answers to our prayers. But faith operates differently. It works in the unseen realm where God is moving pieces, breaking chains, and orchestrating circumstances in ways we cannot yet comprehend. Your prayers are powerful, even if you don't see immediate results. Your persistence in trusting God, continuing to believe, and refusing to give up is like fuel that keeps the spiritual engine running. The spiritual realm responds to faith, and God honors the belief of those who hold on, even when it's hard. There are seasons when it feels like nothing is happening, but God is never inactive. He is always working for your good, even if his activity is hidden from your eyes. The Bible tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. This means that faith itself is the proof that change is coming, even before you can see it. When you pray, when you keep believing, you are moving mountains in the spiritual realm. You are shifting atmospheres, breaking strongholds, and opening doors that will eventually manifest in your physical world. Sometimes the delay between your prayers and the visible outcome can be frustrating. You might wonder if God heard you or if he cares about your situation. But the reality is that God's timing is perfect. He is never late, but he also never rushes his plan. In the waiting, he is preparing the way, lining up blessings and ensuring that what comes is lasting and meaningful. Your faith keeps this process alive. It is like a light in the darkness, showing God that you trust him even when you don't understand what's happening. Persistence is a key part of faith-activating movement. It's not enough to believe for a moment or two. Real faith means holding on through the storms, doubts, and delays. Think about a seed planted in the ground. At first, it looks like nothing is happening. There's no visible growth for days or even weeks. But beneath the surface, the seed is working. Roots are forming, and new life is preparing to burst forth. A faith is like that seed. The longer you nurture it with prayer and trust, the stronger and more alive it becomes. Eventually, you will see the breakthrough you've been waiting for. Faith also helps you stay aligned with God's will during the waiting. When you stop believing because you don't see change, it can be tempting to give up, become discouraged, or try to take control yourself. But faith reminds you that God is in control and that his plans are better than yours. It encourages you to keep praying, to keep seeking his guidance, and to remain hopeful. Even when the situation seems impossible, faith fuels your courage to keep moving forward, knowing that God's promises are true. History and scripture are filled with examples of faith-activating movement. People like Abraham, Moses, David, and the apostles all faced times when change seemed slow or absent, yet their faith in God's promises kept things moving spiritually. Abraham believed God for a son even when he was old. Moses trusted God to deliver Israel despite overwhelming obstacles. David had faith that he would be king despite being overlooked for years. The apostles kept preaching and praying even under persecution. Their faith was the engine behind the miracles and victories they eventually experienced. Your faith is no different. It is the key that unlocks God's power in your life. Even if you cannot see the change yet, keep believing. Keep praying. Keep trusting that God is moving in ways you cannot see. Your persistence shows God that you are serious about your trust in him, and he responds to that trust with action. This divine movement will eventually break through into your reality, and when it does, your testimony will inspire others who are also struggling to keep their faith alive. It's also important to recognize that faith is not passive. It activates movement, but it also calls you to action. Sometimes faith leads you to step out boldly, to make decisions, to take risks, or to keep working towards your goals. God honors faith that is alive and active. Your belief motivates you to keep going even when it's hard, to keep preparing yourself for the breakthrough, and to keep holding on to hope. Remember that faith is a journey, not a one-time event. It grows as you walk with God, face challenges, and experience his faithfulness. Every time you choose to believe instead of doubting, you strengthen your spiritual muscles and prepare yourself for the movement God wants to bring. Even the smallest act of faith can set huge things in motion. So, if you feel like you're stuck or that your prayers are unanswered, don't stop believing. Know that God is working even when it's invisible to you. Your faith, your prayers, and your persistence are powerful forces that activate movement in the spiritual realm. Keep trusting, keep hoping, and keep believing because the breakthrough is on its way. Your faith is the key that unlocks the door to God's promises, and when that door opens, it will be a moment of victory unlike any other. The return will be greater than the loss. This is a promise rooted deeply in the nature of God, who is a God of restoration, redemption, and renewal. When life takes something away from you, whether it's a dream, a relationship, a job, or a season of peace, it's easy to get caught up in grief, regret, or even despair. The pain of loss can feel overwhelming, and the future can seem uncertain or bleak. But God's heart is to restore what has been lost, and not just restore it to the way it was, but to multiply it, making it far greater than before. The comeback that God has planned for you will be bigger, bolder, and more beautiful than you ever imagined. Loss is a universal experience. Everyone faces seasons where something important slips away, whether by circumstance, mistake, or external forces. It's a natural human reaction to focus on the loss itself, the empty space left behind, the dreams that feel shattered, the sense of uncertainty about what's next. But God asks us to look beyond the loss and fix our eyes on the promise of restoration. He specializes in turning brokenness into beauty and loss into abundant gain. The return, the moment when God restores your life, is not just about getting back what was taken. It's about receiving more than you could have planned or hoped for. This truth is echoed throughout Scripture and in the stories of countless people who have experienced God's miraculous restoration. What was once lost was brought back multiplied. A woman who lost her child received more children. A man who lost his reputation became a great leader. A nation in exile was brought home to a land flowing with blessings. These stories remind us that God's restoration is not limited by human understanding or circumstance. When God moves to restore, he does so in a way that surpasses expectations. What you thought was gone forever, God can restore, and then some. God's restoration is also about redemption. He doesn't just give you back what was lost. He redeems the pain and the struggle, turning them into testimonies of his grace and power. The losses you experienced were not wasted. They became part of your story, part of the testimony that will inspire others and glorify God. When you come back from loss, you carry with you strength, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of God's faithfulness. Your journey through loss becomes a pathway to greater purpose and blessing. The return will be bigger than you imagine because God's plans for you are not limited by your past or your current circumstances. Your setbacks do not define your future. God's vision for your life is expansive and abundant. He wants to bless you in ways that bring glory to him and joy to your heart. The restoration you experience will be bold and transformative, impacting not just your life, but also the lives of those around you. When God restores, he often does so publicly and powerfully, so that his name is lifted high through your testimony. It's important to hold on to hope in the midst of loss. Hope is the anchor that keeps you steady when the waves of grief and uncertainty crash around you. It's the belief that what you have lost is not the final word, that God is still working even when you can't see it. Hope fuels your faith and keeps you moving forward even when the road seems long. It reminds you that your story is not over and that the best is yet to come. The process of restoration may require patience and trust. It may involve seasons of waiting, healing, and preparation. God's timing is perfect, and he knows exactly when to bring about the return. Sometimes the waiting feels difficult, but it is in these moments that God is shaping you for what lies ahead. Your faithfulness during the waiting season positions you to receive the fullness of God's restoration. When the time comes, the return will be overwhelming in its goodness and grace. Your comeback will not just be a return to what you once had, but a transformation into something greater. It will be filled with new opportunities, fresh hope, and renewed purpose. The losses that once seemed so devastating will become the stepping stones to your greatest victories. You will look back and see that God's hand was guiding you through every twist and turn, preparing you for an extraordinary comeback. It's also vital to remember that this restoration is personal and unique to you. God knows your heart, your dreams, and your struggles. He is not bound by anyone else's story or timeline. Your return will be tailored specifically to you, reflecting His intimate knowledge of your needs and desires. This personalized restoration will bring a deep sense of joy and fulfillment because it comes from God's perfect love for you. When you experience this greater return, it will be a powerful testimony to God's faithfulness and power. Your story will inspire others who are facing loss and pain, showing them that restoration is possible and that God's promises are true. Your comeback will shine as a beacon of hope in a world that often feels broken and discouraging. It will be a living proof that God redeems, restores, and multiplies. So no matter what you have lost, hold on to the truth that the return will be greater than the loss. God is a God of redemption and restoration. He sees beyond your current pain and is working to bring about a comeback that is bigger, bolder, and more beautiful than you ever imagined. Trust in His timing, stay faithful in the waiting, and keep your eyes fixed on the promise of restoration. Your comeback is coming, and it will be a glorious testimony of God's unfailing love and power. All glory goes to God. This is a profound truth that anchors every true comeback and every testimony of restoration. When you rise again after a season of hardship, loss, or setback, it will not be by your own strength or effort alone. Your comeback will be the result of God's hand working mightily in your life. Recognizing this keeps your heart humble and your focus on the one who deserves all the praise. Your story will not only be a personal victory, but a living testimony to God's power, grace, and perfect timing. When life knocks you down, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the struggle and to think that any recovery will be because of your own resilience, determination, or talent. Human nature often wants to claim credit for achievements, especially after a hard-fought battle, but the truth is, nothing truly lasting or transformational happens outside of God's involvement. Your strength alone is limited and fragile, but God's power is infinite and sustaining. When you rise again, it is God who lifts you up, renews your spirit, and opens doors for your future. The hand of God on your life is what makes the difference between a mere comeback and a true breakthrough. It is His grace that sustains you when your own strength falters. It is His wisdom that guides your steps when the path is unclear. It is His power that breaks chains, heals wounds, and restores what was lost. Your comeback story is proof that God is actively involved in your life, orchestrating circumstances and moving on your behalf. Without His intervention, the obstacles you faced would have remained insurmountable. Giving God all the glory also means acknowledging that your journey is part of His greater plan. Your life is not just a series of random events or coincidences. It is woven into the fabric of God's purpose. When you come through trials and setbacks, your story becomes a testament to His faithfulness and sovereignty. It shows how He can turn difficult situations into opportunities for His glory to be revealed. Your comeback becomes a beacon of hope to others, pointing them toward the God who makes all things new. Humility is a natural response when you recognize God's role in your comeback. It keeps pride at bay and reminds you that you are dependent on His grace every step of the way. Pride can blind us to the fact that God is the source of all good things, and it can cause us to lose sight of the spiritual dimension of our victories. When you give God the glory, you cultivate a heart of gratitude and worship that honors Him. This gratitude fuels your faith and deepens your relationship with God, preparing you for even greater things ahead. Your story, once you rise again, becomes a powerful testimony that glorifies God. It is a narrative filled with lessons of perseverance, trust, and divine intervention. Others who hear your story will be encouraged to believe that no matter how hard life gets, God's power is greater. Your comeback illustrates that God's timing is perfect, even when it seems delayed or uncertain. The moments of waiting, silence, and struggle are part of His plan, and His glory is revealed when He brings victory in His time. Acknowledging that all glory goes to God also shapes how you live after your comeback. It keeps your heart aligned with God's purposes rather than your own ambitions. It encourages you to use your restored life and renewed strength to serve others and uplift those who are still struggling. Your victory is not just for you. It is meant to be shared so that others can witness God's faithfulness and be inspired to hold on to hope. Sometimes the greatest testimony is found not only in the